Wow. What a game. What an end of the season. 48-45. Ohio State wins the Rose Bowl in one of the all-time classic Rose Bowl games in the 108th all-time playing of this incredible bowl game and truly a game that I think Ohio State fans around the country will never forget. Lots to break down with Coach Tommy Zagorski when we come back. The Ohio State Buckeyes, 2022 Rose Bowl champions. We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Well, hi, everybody, and Happy New Year from Pasadena, California. Welcome to the first 2022 edition of Buckeye Breakdown. I'm Brendan Gulick with Coach Tommy Zagorski. And, Coach, while I always am the one to lead this off, I feel it is appropriate. I'm in the house that Keith Jackson built in your mind, so I need you to give me a jump start here on this instant analysis breakdown podcast of what Keith Jackson would say if he were at the Rose Bowl.
Putting me on the spot.
Right out of the game.
Started off tonight. Ordinarily, I mean, we're talking here in Pasadena, the granddaddy of them all, the 108th running of the Roses. The Buckeyes and the Utes gave us all we could handle, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba was unbelievable tonight, catching balls out of the sky that only the good Lord himself could probably catch. That and more coming up on Buckeyes Now.
Oh, my God. Legendary. Unbelievable. And you know what? An intro fitting for a performance. I know sometimes we use hyperbole. You know, you think a guy plays so well, you tend to think, oh, could he have played any better? That was the best I've ever seen. It was this extreme or that extreme, both good and bad. I mean, this game, I'm not sure if the first half was good football, but my gosh, was it wildly entertaining. I mean, there were 6 touchdowns in an 8-minute stretch in the second quarter. Defense was certainly not playing well for either team, and obviously not playing well for the Buckeyes. It's been a common theme in a lot of games throughout the course of the year. Perhaps it's a little easier to swallow a bad defensive performance in a game that's, you know, it's an exhibition, right? It's a celebration. It's a bowl game. This was not going to help or hurt Ohio State's chances just by winning or losing for next year's national championship as they try to chase that. But let's just start on the surface level. I mean, we can't start this podcast anywhere other than what Ohio State did offensively. C.J. Stroud with the second most passing yards by a Big Ten quarterback ever. The Big Ten is the oldest conference in the history of college football. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, it's believed that he had the most receiving yards by any receiver in a bowl game ever. He shattered the Ohio State the Ohio State single season receiving yards and catches record. C.J. Stroud was unstoppable. And for a while, Tommy, it kind of felt like the Buckeyes needed that performance because the defense wasn't playing well. But as the game went along, you just find yourself in this state of like wonder and awe watching these two young players put on an absolute show.
Yeah, I mean, it was just so much fun to watch. And one of the things that, and I know, Brendan, you were there live, so you got to feel that energy. But every single time, it was like a heavyweight fight. I mean, after every blow, Utah comes back and scores. And then at one point, C.J. Stroud threw 3 touchdown passes for 3 consecutive passes in the game. It was like we were watching an arena game. And to watch those guys be able to execute that way, you know, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I mean, what a performance. Just one to remember. And it's just his moxie, his ability to just kind of rally people around him, and his genuine excitement for others on the field. I mean, he was more excited when Marvin Harrison Jr. scored touchdowns than when he did. And then to watch Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of be Chris Olave light, go out and isolate one-on-one and go run these routes. It was just so encouraging to watch what Ohio State's going to bring to the table when they play Notre Dame, which I know seems a far point away, but it's really not that far away. You know, what they're going to be geared towards and what they're going to build off of. And just C.J. Stroud's development. I mean, we talk about from Minnesota, wondering who this kid is, to who we watched today. I mean, he is going to rewrite the record books. As long as he stays healthy, he will rewrite the record books in Ohio State football and potentially this sport. And one of the things that you see about it is just his development, his maturity, his ability, even in situations where it doesn't look great, to still stay upbeat, to still be the leader, to still be the guy that Ohio State needs going forward. And I think the one thing that was just absolutely breathtaking to watch and exciting to watch from the couch here back here in Northeast Ohio was seeing Ryan Day's reaction. And Brendan, I don't know if you got to see the TV reaction of it on the Jaxon Smith-Njigba catch. I don't want to use the profanity that he used, but I mean, his disbelief at that play. And when you're a coach and you see your players execute something like that is that beautiful, and you just you can't believe what just happened, and you're in the headset talking to your buddies who you've been grinding with, trying to execute for this long 27-day period to put this back on. I mean, he caught it. Literally, to see that excitement, to see that joy, it was really something special. And it's going to be incredibly important for Ohio State as they take this momentum into the offseason with a Rose Bowl championship. I mean, what a great way to do it, and to see these young players really adapt, really adjust, and really overcome. I think there were 5 true freshmen that played today on the offense. So, I mean, to see those guys go out there, to see them execute, the future is very bright for Ohio State football.
There's a pretty strict no cheering in the press box policy. It's just a professional courtesy. But every once in a while, you see unbelievable plays that you don't break the no cheering, but you can hear like an audible whoa, or you got to be kidding me kind of thing. And on that last touchdown that Stroud threw to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I mean, there wasn't a human being in this stadium that saw that didn't look at the person next to them and go, I literally don't believe what I just saw. I mean, it was absolutely remarkable. A perfect throw, a perfect catch, otherworldly athleticism. And I think Kyle Whittingham's team, first of all, we said this all week long, and I know Buckeye fans didn't want to hear it, how far we've fallen that you're propping up Utah. That team's a real deal. They're very, very good. That was not a fluky performance. Ohio State's defense has struggled a lot throughout the course of the season against good offenses. Utah's got some really good dudes, and they run a tough scheme. And I give Ohio State's defense a lot of credit for the way they played in the second half to give the offense a chance to make their way back in the game. We'll dive into that more in a minute. But I think Kyle Whittingham knew that, his team probably wasn't going to be able to compete on a talent perspective. He knew going into that game that Ohio State's raw talent and athleticism are probably unmatched aside from maybe Alabama and maybe Georgia. But that Utah team played with a ton of heart. And I'm telling you, being in the stadium, you really couldn't tell because both teams had some version of red. So there was a lot of red everywhere. But my gosh, this was a virtual road game for the Buckeyes. I mean, I had heard as much as 80-20 the ticket sales, Utah to Ohio State. And I believe it because there were moments where, you really felt like this was a true road game. I give Ohio State so much credit for the way they stayed with it. And again, didn't really have much of a run game. You could argue they didn't need it. You could argue they kind of had to go away from it. Obviously, C.J. Stroud put up, a ridiculous performance. It doesn't take away what Travion Henderson is capable of. But, I think, Z, if you look at the way this team is constructed and you look at the way Ryan Day wants to run an offense, having a pass and rush attack that's that out of balance is not preferred.
No, the elixir tonight was not what Ryan Day wanted to get into. A lot of losses for the Buckeyes. The losses for the Buckeyes this year have been when CJ's had to throw the ball 40 times a game. He threw it 46 times tonight. They only rushed the ball 20 times, and really only 19 of those were called runs. The one was where Stroud broke it on that 3rd and 8 to elongate that first touchdown drive. And really, Travion Henderson, he still averaged a pedestrian 5 yards a carry tonight. It was not a commitment by Ohio State. It was one of those things where it looked like they went into the game and Ryan Day goes, yeah, I get it. We don't have Chris Olave. We don't have Garrett Wilson. We don't have Jerry Rice. We don't have Randy Moss. We don't have whoever it may be that's going to be playing wide receiver for us. But I got the CJ Stroud kid that I have a lot of confidence in. And I'm going to let him go tear apart a defensive secondary that's playing with a kid who's a really good, Clark Phillips III is a very good football player. And you would love to see him opposite Denzel Burke. I mean, right now, every Buckeye fan would love to see that. And they basically, 2019 leading up to signing day, if Hafley doesn't leave to go to Boston College, that may have happened. You may still have him here. You may have him playing on the other side of the ball this afternoon. But what you really do see is you see a team that was had Ryan Day saying, you know what, they got running backs playing corner, they got safeties that don't know what they're doing. Like, I'm going to go attack this as much as I can because he's like a kid in a candy shop. That's the mind you see in Ryan Day. He looks at the game and he looks past the box and says, this is what we can do. This is how we can extend the football, and this is how we can go with it. I just really think going forward, you're going to look back at this and say, all right, CJ Stroud, like, why didn't we throw the ball more with him? Because he's going to be such a prolific passer in his time here. But Travion Henderson is going to have his carries. I think going forward, the one thing we learned up front on the offensive line, this is not to be negative. I thought Stud and I thought Kennedy did a great job with the O-line this year. They adjusted. They overcame a lot of different things that there were issues, throughout the year for them. Sometimes playing offensive tackles at guard take away from the ability to kind of have that inside rushing attack that Ohio State needs to have week in and week out, especially when they're playing against stronger defensive tackles. And that's really what you saw. Michigan was strong and stout inside. Oregon, strong and stout inside. Utah, strong and stout inside. Those were the teams that gave Ohio State problems this year just because they had tackles playing guard. And one of those things are, and it's people talk about the height, there's a different type of human being that plays guard than tackle. You're allowed to give a little bit more of a sawed-off guy. You need a physical guy. You need some of those times they're not basketball players or wrestlers inside. And as you watch Ohio State this year, they walk in, they're probably the prettiest looking offensive line in college football. I mean, those guys look the part. They're gorgeous. And, as you see them, but having some maulers inside are going to help them kind of going forward. The big thing that they're going to have to convince is DeJuan Jones to stay. He's going to go, he could go in the draft if he wants to. In my opinion, I think he stays another year and really hones in on his craft. He's still got to work on his body a little bit, another year with Mickey Marotti developing his body and preparing him to be a day 1 draft pick opposed to a day 2 or 3 draft pick, for the big fella out of Ben Davis. So I think that's kind of where you see, going forward for them. That's going to be this offseason. That's going to be the battle cry. Who they find is that elixir to put the right offensive line together. I think Paris moves outside, which we've talked about on this cast many a times, and really look at that, and this is where Ryan Day is going to have a lot of things to be, going forward to look at, for his ball club.
I think we can get to the defense in one moment, but I have one more offensive thing that I think is worth talking about, because all of the conversation this week leading up to this game from Buckeye fans was how frustrated they were with Olave and Wilson opting out. Are you allowed to be mad that they opt out? If the Buckeyes were going to lose the game or win the game, I don't know. Like, you got to pick where you think and feel for all this stuff. There were so many emotions and people, feeling things left and right that just didn't seem to make sense sometimes. I can tell you, being here, this place is magical. It is unbelievable. And while this is not the college football playoff this year, you certainly get the impression that this is a place that, teams really want to be. And I think Ohio State, CJ Stroud said it in his postgame press conference. He straight out said, if you didn't want to go play in the Rose Bowl, I question how much you love football. Pretty obvious that he had, with the performance he had tonight, how much he wanted to play and perform well in this game. But I want to turn the attention to the wide receivers for a moment, because while we talked about Jaxon Smith-Njigba, without Garrett Wilson and without Chris Olave, who are first-round talents, we'll see where they end up. Julian Fleming got some nice touches. Emeka Egbuka certainly looked like the kind of player you hope he would be, number 1 recruit at wide receiver in the country. And Marvin Harrison Jr. scores 3 touchdowns and looks like a seasoned vet, not a true freshman. I know we've beaten a dead bush all year long with the wide receiver room and the high praise, but to actually see these guys on the field in pressure situations with a comeback win in a game that means a lot, what more can you ask for in terms of guys growing up right before your eyes?
I mean, those are the best things you can have. I mean, Ryan Day could not have asked for a better situation for those young wide receivers. He and Brian Hartline have to be getting on that plane tonight or tomorrow, whenever they're going to head back to Columbus. And he legitimately has to look around and say, that's way better than a spring game. Because really, I mean, realistically, that's the only other experience they were going to get those guys in was a spring game. And the next game that they were going to play was against the University of Notre Dame. And when you do that, that's a big, big task ahead. The amount of maturity that they gain tonight, the amount of the ability to just watch those guys get those reps, it's going to build so much confidence for that room when they play pitch and catch this entire offseason. Because that's one of the things that people don't realize. These guys, when they work out at Ohio State, the weight room walks right out to the indoor. These guys are going to throw every day. They're going to walk out there. They're going to go through routes. They're going to be on the same page. They're going to work with each other. I mean, they really spent the last 27 days getting ready for that. I believe it's 27 days. I keep using that number. I could be off by 1 or 2, but 27 days that they've been using to get themselves acclimated with one another. And to have that kind of performance, it's going to be scary what these guys do going forward. Then you add into the equation a healthy Travion Henderson. I know Mayan Williams only got a couple carries, but gosh, did he look good tonight. His physicality. I mean, every time he gets on TV, I mean, Kirk Herbstreit thinks the kid's 300 pounds. I mean, that's all they talk about. I'm like, kind of like sick of hearing about it. But, you know, it's like one of those things where Herbie's like, he's just so much thicker. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, the kid's a muscular kid. He's going to run the football effectively. You know, it really takes into account, you watched Georgia last night. Georgia's got 2 really good running backs that they're able to give the ball to at different times. Ohio State's going to have that luxury going forward. In addition to that, also, like I said, finding who those guards are, getting those tougher guys inside so you can still run your gap scheme, still be able to pass protect inside. This offense has an incredible ability going forward to be very, very special. The thing about opting out, though, and I don't want to omit this, is I have to support those kids. And the reason you have to support them, in my opinion, the reason I support those kids is because coaches opt out all the time. Mm-hmm. There are coaches that opt out of games all the time. There's coaches that go get a job somewhere else. The same reason there's a transfer portal. These coaches leave, the kids leave. When they leave these certain places to go somewhere else that they perceive to be a better opportunity, whether it be the National Football League, whether it be Burger King, whether it be Mickey Mouse Tech, wherever they're going, you have to afford them the ability to go do that. And I think when you let coaches go do that, how can you tell a coach who's supposed to be the leader of these men in a room to not do that? And then go at a player and say, well, you don't want to play. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. You know, I like tonight, Ole Miss, their starting quarterback, you know, Matt Corral gets hurt in like the 3rd series. They're playing a freshman who signed with them a couple weeks ago from Starkville, Mississippi. I mean, there's a lot into that you see. There's a lot of things that run into it. So I think it's important that these players, you know, there's a lot. They've given a lot to Ohio State. And one of the things I think you think about tonight is looking forward is remember tonight, C.J. Stroud played. Travion Henderson played. Jaxon Smith-Njigba played. Marvin Harrison Jr. played. Because those guys also are going to come to a time in their tenure at Ohio State where they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to play and play Ohio State. Now, granted, if they're in the playoff, it's a little bit easier of a decision. Sure. But if the Buckeyes are in the Rose Bowl again, you know, you really hope, and C.J. Stroud said that tonight, you hope that he stays true to that 3-4 years from now, if he's playing in the Rose Bowl, that he hopes that he's going to play in that game, even though he's getting ready to go be potentially the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So I think that's where you look at it from those guys opting out. It's really, really a tough situation. And Brendan, you and I hit it on it yesterday. You know, it takes Capital One to say, hey, we're going to put you in a commercial with Samuel L. Jackson or whatever thing you want to use to try to get these guys rolling. I think that's where you see this going. And I don't see a problem with it. There's a lot of money being made. I mean, majority of televisions across America have this on, even if they're not watching it, you know, live, they're watching it in the background. I think that, you know, people have heard Chris Fowler say, wow, more in the last 2 days than they ever thought they would see possible. So it's been an incredible experience for the Buckeyes. And obviously it's great to come away with a win.
Oh, fans certainly proud of the guys that played. All right. I don't think we can go any further without addressing the news that Pete Thamel tweeted out maybe less than 10 minutes before we went live here tonight. And that news is, according to sources, you know, for Pete Thamel, who is a national reporter for Yahoo Sports, does great work. Pete says Matt Barnes is on his way to Memphis to become the new defensive coordinator of the Memphis Tigers. You know, I guess we'll learn that confirmed somewhere along the way, probably sooner than later. I don't want to talk too much about what is to come because this is about this team. It's about today. But if Matt Barnes is on his way out, and everybody knows at this point Jim Knowles is on his way in, could that be the only move? Maybe. Maybe Jim Knowles decides to make another couple of changes. Maybe Ryan Day is, working with him on how they want to structure the coaching staff of the defense next year. But let's just focus on today. First half sucked. I mean, defensively, it was terrible. Not good. Can't give up 35 points in the first half of a game. I realize one of them was on a special teams play, but multiple long touchdowns, couldn't get off the field. Really, really bad tackling if your name isn't Tommy Eichenberg. Tommy played his butt off. I thought he was outstanding all game. But outside of that, the first half was terrible. The second half was fantastic. And if you're going to knock somebody for playing really poorly in the first half, I think you got to give credit when they turned things around and played much better in the second half. The Buckeyes don't win this game if the defense doesn't figure out a way to give the offense a chance to get back in it. So, it's a 60-minute game. Certainly had some high and low swings. I think you'd rather find ways to level that out a little bit. But how did you see the defensive performance?
I really thought, it takes me back to when I was a kid. We didn't have a lot of money, and we would go to Pymatuning Lake, which is on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio. And whenever you rented a pontoon boat, and those pontoon boats are probably the worst boats in America, you would leave there, and there was this wake thing that would just kind of bounce in the water. They're called buoys. I don't think anyone ever seen one of those buoys. It says the wake thing, and they kind of bow back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And no matter how many times you drive by a buoy, you hit it with that boat, it's never going to take the boat down. It's just going to kind of bounce off of it. And that's kind of what the Buckeyes looked like defensively in the first half. It looked like they took both their hands and said, you know what, guys? Waka Flocka said no hands, so do we. And legitimately, they didn't use them the entire first half. It was so hard to watch from a fundamental standpoint to see them not try to tackle and wrap up. This is why they're going to pay Jim Knowles $2 million. It's not because of his coverages. It's not because of his blitz schemes. It's going to be because of a level of toughness and a level of technique that's going to come to this defense that he's going to bring. He's going to bring back to the fundamentals. And it's no disrespect to Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes took over a defense in a really bad situation. He never really got to put his stamp on it. And Matt Barnes may go to Memphis.
But he did an admirable job,
100%.
Riding the ship after what was a pretty ugly first couple games.
I mean, to see Cade Stover be one of the better tacklers on the defense tonight is Cade Stover's been playing tight end, in the 12 personnel package. Mitch had a great game, and Mitch has played really well and blocked really well. But Cade's been somebody they've used, and Kevin Wilson did a phenomenal job developing him, really in the offseason and really this season. But to see Tommy Eichenberg make tackles, to see Steel Chambers continue to go forward. I thought Ronnie Hickman really struggled tonight. It was hard to watch at a lot of points. Now, he made a big play.
Sure.
He made probably one of the bigger plays of the night.
Yep, absolutely.
But Ronnie got picked on in good coverage. He struggled tackling tonight. He was a little rusty, but I think they're going to get him right. I still think there's a lot of upside. I know everyone jokes. I joked I bought a 14 jersey at the beginning of the year. I was just waiting them to put another X on it for me as the big fellow that I am. But I realistically, I think what you see going forward is a defense that it's halftime. Somebody walked in there and came through and cut the ropes, let them use their hands, and said, let's go play fundamental football. Let's go make tackles. And, it's to see Tommy Eichenberg, the way that he led the defense, the way that he just continued to fight and continued to push and continued to claw. I think it came to a 2 and 17 tackles tonight for him, which is obviously the most he's had as an Ohio State Buckeye. He played like the player that they recruited out of Cleveland State Ignatius High School. You watch Steel Chambers play really, really well. I thought that the defensive ends at times, dove inside too much and kind of let the quarterback run a little bit. And that really kind of hurt the Buckeyes, from a defensive perspective.
What do you think about Jack Sawyer's ejection?
Jack Sawyer's ejection was a tough one. You're going to make a play. It's one of those things where he's hustling, he's rallying to the football, he's going to tackle. And this starts with every guy that's out there. There might be people here that coach Pee Wee, high school, college, National Football League, whatever it may be. You have to put your head up. There's no excuse. If you put the crown of your head down, you're opening up your ability to be ejected from a football game. It's just going to happen, especially now with the cameras, especially with the replay. It's also to protect you, to protect Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer puts his head down, and granted, his neck is probably like a tree, because all the neck stuff they do with those guys. But, realistically, he could have hurt himself. And that's where you see they're trying to take that out of the game. And it's not being soft. It's not being stupid. These guys have to live a life with a brain. And you have to keep your eyes up. I remember the first time I played at Benedictine High School, the legendary Dan O'Shaughnessy, who's a well-known Mr. Benedictine like myself, he literally would always say, Bull Nick, Bull Nick, Bull Nick, and this nasty spit would get in your face. And I think that was really the only coaching point I ever remember. The legendary, he's left us a couple years ago, but Coach O would always say, Bull Nick. Like legitimately is keeping your head up when you tackle. I mean, we make T-shirts that say heads up tackling.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we're talking about. Your eyes up. There's no sport. There's no event in any sport that you know of that we play that they tell you, put your head down, look down, and don't see what you're doing. Like, could you imagine? I mean, Brendan, you grew up playing baseball.
Yeah.
You just curveball. All right, you're going to keep your head down. You're going to keep your chin down on it, but then you're going to put your eyes down to the ground and just swing and hope that you make contact with it. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you have to see things through. It's the same thing with tackling, and that's what they're going to talk about. Unfortunately, Jack had his head down. That's why he ended up getting ejected from the game. It was not the most egregious hit on the planet, but it was enough for them to put it up to put it in doubt. You have to play above those calls, and I think unfortunately that happened. And when that happened, it was kind of one of those moments where it's like everything was going wrong for the Buckeyes. It was like the Murphy's Law of the first half, the kickoff return, which we're not going to really. We usually don't hit special teams too hard on this. I'm blown away that we can't kick the ball to the end zone. Like
what was going on with that? That was
I have no idea. I was going to ask you if it was windy there tonight. What was the problem?
Like, it was infuriating. I'm like, what are we doing?
The ball to the 12-yard line, and then they try to like swib it to his side. Like if you're going to kick a pop kick, you angle that pop kick to the sideline because you want to make sure that you get it in the hands of somebody that's not him. For him to have the ability to come underneath that kick, to go field it, and then go to take it off. I mean, every time the Buckeyes kicked off tonight, I held my breath.
Yeah,
because I was so concerned.
I felt the same way at the end of the game when they kick a field goal with 12 seconds left, thinking like, we still got a kick. This is uncomfortable. I literally looked at the guy next to me in the press box and said, maybe they should kick it out of bounds. Take their chance with the defense instead of the kick coverage.
Well, it's even kick it out of bounds or do you swib it up the middle? Like you have a dribbler that you work on. All right. You have a dribbler that you work on where you legitimately kick it as hard and low as you can. You hope that it ricochets off one of the front guys on the front line. And you're kicking it because you're saying this. The quarterback's like their fourth string quarterback, some high school wrestler from Utah who's coming in who looked like Jack Miller's like Cro-Magnon. If Jack Miller was a caveman, that's what he looked like. Really ugly, thick brow kid, whatever. And he comes in and he you're going to put the ball on him. You're not going to give it to the kid who's already returned a kickoff for a touchdown. And they kicked it to him. Like, it's like, yeah. Wait a second, guys. Like, there had to be a conversation. There had to be something. And I'm sure that's what they're going to address, going forward. Maybe that would have been the one thing. Matt Barnes was a special teams coordinator. That might have been what Ryan Day offered him to stick around. Like, hey, you go back to special teams, and he's kind of like, I'm good. Like, I still remember the day when Matt Barnes became the secondary coach by title. I remember a lot of the articles were like, he was promoted from special teams coordinator to the defensive backs coach. And I go, wait a second, like, you go from being a coordinator to be promoted to a position coach. Like, it's kind of, we got this a little bit backwards, boys. So, but no, I realistically, I think, as you see it grow forward, it's tackling's got to be crucial. I mean, you look down there, maybe Tommy Eichenberg's the guy down there on the kickoff that's getting close to making that tackle that kind of forces it back to the sideline to funnel it back in, and they got to try to throw the lateral and everything else that kind of coincided with it. But, but we've talked about this a million times. That linebacker room, like you said yesterday, CJ Hicks is coming in. They're going to expect him to be a really good player. Reed Carrico from Ironton has not really played much, but he's a guy that they're going to have to add a lot. He's going to have to add some value coming up here soon. And then really from Marysville,
Gabe Powers coming in.
I almost said Gavin Roars. Gavin Roars is the old lineman that's going to Miami, Ohio. He's another good player. He's a good inside guard guy. But no, realistically, those are the ones that you're looking at. And you say that, I think that's where you see them kind of, going forward, where they're going to need.
Yeah, and Diamante Trainum, who's transferred in from Arizona State, is going to be in the mix too.
Diamante coming home, that's important for them as well. So, I mean, those are all people that are going to add value for these guys, going forward and really allow this Jim Knowles defense to kind of come to fruition under some tougher, more physical type players.
I can't wait till we get a chance to talk to Jim Knowles, and I'm sure if somebody doesn't ask him, I will. Where he was watching this game, what he was doing. I wonder if he was like chawing on a cigar or, running a marathon during the middle of the game, or I don't know what he was doing, but he had to be first half. He probably had to be like, oh boy, got some work.
I envision him kind of like in Rocky IV, like where Drago trains and then we're like Rocky trains. Yeah. I had him more like we're Rocky trains. He's like somewhere with some old guy from Philly because he's a Philly guy.
Yeah.
He's in some he's running in like snow somewhere, like listening to him. He's just like, third down, like just yelling it, like he's ready to go.
To hang on Sloopy in his ears.
Yeah, he's ready. Yeah. So I have Hearts on Fire playing in the background with the Hang on Sloopy rendition. So
yeah,
Buckeye fans get to that. So
yeah, love that. All right. I guess we'll wrap with this. We've got so much to talk about in the offseason, but from your experience coaching in a bowl game at a Power 5 school, the excitement level of winning a game, going into the offseason on a celebratory note, you beat a good team, and obviously in a game of this magnitude, it's going to be something they tell their grandkids about someday, and certainly it's a part of their legacy now as college football players. You won the Rose Bowl. It's a big deal. But what can winning a bowl game do for the immediate success, not just the long-term success? I'm talking like the next few weeks before spring ball starts. What does winning a bowl game do for a team in these next few weeks here?
It's a more positive environment to be in. That first team meeting where Ryan, Ryan's going to let these guys go home. I don't know when Ohio State starts the semester. I don't know if it's the 3rd or if they start the 8th, with the Omicron, a lot of these things are pushed back. But anyways, the first time that they get together as an Ohio State football team going forward for next year, Ryan Day's going to address this team. And the message is not going to be about redemption. It's not going to be about a chip on their shoulder. It's going to be, hey, look what we did. We won the Rose Bowl. Phenomenal. Now we still feel that we should still be playing on the 10th. And that's going to be kind of the battle cry going forward for these guys. They're going to be able to build on this. You look at it, you don't have that sour taste in your mouth. I always hated losing the last game of the year whenever that happened in my career because it just kind of lingers.
Sure.
The best way to get off of a loss is going and winning again and getting back into it. And I think it's going to help these guys grow. It's going to help them develop. They're going to learn so much more as they go forward. Jim Knowles is going to be in that room with these guys. They get all the skill development. And there's going to be a lot of volunteer time where the players are allowed to potentially walk in and watch some film with coach when he's just kind of hanging out, that, are going to be really important for these guys growing up, kind of quickly. And I think that momentum you have going into the offseason, it not only helps you in recruiting, it just makes the facility feel better. I mean, literally, you can smell the roses. You're going to smell that throughout the facility. It's a happier place to be. When you lose that last game of the year, it's just that feeling of we never hoisted a trophy. Nobody got a ring. Nobody did this. Nobody did that. Those are tough. Those are tough to swallow. So I think going forward, it's going to be huge for this Ohio State team. All that being said, the competitors that are in that room, they're going to talk like, hey, the Rose Bowl was great. But at the end of the day, those guys, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, C.J. Stroud, Paris Johnson Jr., Cade Stover, Tommy Eichenberg, Ronnie Hickman, Steele Chambers, hopefully Zach Harrison decides to come back. He kind of was, I know he got beat up at the end of the game. He didn't have really the season he was hoping for because of injuries, really help his stock rise and come back another year and be a captain and a great leader for these guys. The rest of this crew, whoever I'm omitting, Denzel Burton, these guys, they want to come back and now come away with a national championship ring. And
I'm sure they want it even more after watching what happened in the Orange Bowl.
100%. And this is what's going to push them forward and look at it and say, can you believe that these guys up north or who represented us in our conference, the other day, and they'll go, we could have done better than that. Well, you had your opportunity. So now you're going to push forward and you're going to make it hungry. And I mean, really, that's why that's the difference. That's why you and I are talking about the Rose Bowl today instead of talking about the Orange Bowl, is because there was a guy in that facility. And I've talked about it. I've gushed about Agent Hutchinson a million times. I told you when I first met that kid when he was in high school, he was a different cat. Like, that guy rallied a team of guys and said, look, like, this is what it is. We need to change it. Now, going forward, like what Ohio State's got coming back, what Michigan's got coming back, like the Buckeyes have on paper exactly what they're looking for. It's going to take a leader. It's going to take a group of those guys to push forward, to drag this team forward, and to make it, the ability to get back to the standard that all the fans that are here tonight listening and across the country that love Ohio State to get back to what they're accustomed to watching.
I'll just close with this. I kind of echoing what you said. I talked very briefly with Tony Alford before the game and wished him luck and essentially said, how cool is this place? And he goes, it's pretty cool. It's a lot cooler if you win. And to your point, it's a much easier plane ride home, and it's a much more palatable taste around the facility the next several weeks. But but you really don't like losing games of this magnitude. And so even though it's not the college football playoff, and in this world where we have created a playoff system that makes it feel like you're either in the playoffs and you're relevant, or you're out of the playoff and it doesn't matter. A game like this really does matter, especially for a young team. Let's just remind ourselves one more time with what happened last year to the Buckeyes and a lot of other teams, but with the young guys playing for Ohio State. No early season non-conference games. Spring ball was canceled. All of the COVID impacts on Big Ten football, that's going to linger for this entire roster until all of those guys are gone. And especially while those guys are still young. Travion Henderson didn't play his senior year of high school football, and he played in the Rose Bowl today. There's a lot of guys that are in that same stratosphere. So I think today was really, really meaningful for the younger guys on Ohio State's roster to be a catalyst for this offseason to push them toward what they're hoping to accomplish next year. Obviously, the Big Ten championship is in Indianapolis. That's where the national championship happens to be this year. The Buckeyes would love to have both a trip to Indianapolis next year and a trip back out to Los Angeles because the national championship's at SoFi Stadium next January. Lots more to talk about when the offseason officially arrives tomorrow. Why don't we just wrap it up for tonight? This has been a ton of fun. So appreciative of everybody that's helped us with our coverage all year long. This was a fun day and fun week, frankly. And Tommy, I know you jumped on this season. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having so much fun with us and for being a part. I know folks really enjoy hearing your perspective, and look forward to seeing what the next few months have in store here. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. See you guys soon. Buckeye Breakdown, Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated, and head over to BuckeyesNow.com.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State. There's something that doesn't feel right. Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy.
I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy. He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here.
Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.